real update on everything, that I would... Wow, that is annoying when you're recording. Love the squeaky floorboards.
Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with the 2019 update.
So hi everybody, I'm not actually Kelsey, in case you were confused. And it did take us like a minute and a half to get that, and we still didn't get it right. So I know we've talked about me a little bit, but I'm just going to give a Chris in less than 1 minute. So I am an elementary school music teacher. I enjoy reading, not as much as Kelsey does. I like thrillers, mysteries. Those are my jam. I've gotten into reading some nonfiction this year, which is kind of fun. I'm a sports fan. So here are some of the books that I read this year. I started out, and I cheated a little bit because I think I started this one on December the 23rd, 2018, not 2019, but I didn't finish it until 2019, so close enough. I very much enjoyed this book. I mean, it was John Grisham, so really who's surprised? But it was interesting. I don't know what I expected it to be, but it wasn't what I expected it to be. It was far more interesting, and there were a lot more plot twists, and it's been a little while since I read it, but I don't remember this one seeming like he just quit writing, and sometimes it feels like he just, it's like, good enough, and quits writing. And actually, it's kind of funny, as 2019 has progressed, this actually gets more relevant to today, and this book came out a long time ago. 1996, so I was 2. Maybe 1. After that one, I read this one. Yes, there's a theme. I didn't like it as much, but I still liked it. This one was interesting. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, because it was like a collection of short stories about the rogue lawyer. Like, they were all connected, and like everything came full circle in the end, and you were like, oh. So while it was short stories, it was also a book. It was interesting, and as I'm talking about this, I'm remembering that I liked this one a lot. Oh, this is the reason that I'm reading nonfiction books now. John Grisham wrote a nonfiction book called The Innocent Man. This was a slow read. There's only about 20 chapters in this book, which is inconsistent with what he does. No, there's 15 chapters in this book. John Grisham writes really short chapters, and that's one of the things I like about him, is that I can read them. And like, if I'm like, I've got 5 minutes, I can read a chapter. This was, I've got an entire afternoon, I can read a chapter. It was nonfiction. It was slower than what I usually read of his, but it was really interesting. This guy was accused of murdering this lady he really didn't know in this small town, and he had some mental issues that weren't diagnosed and weren't being, they were diagnosed, but they weren't being treated by him. It really kind of points out some things about the system that you don't always think about. Yeah, very much enjoyed that one. Oh, I think I gave all of these 5 stars. I haven't even been looking at that. Nope, Runaway Jury, I gave 4. So after that, I was like, hey, nonfiction books are kind of fun. And I'd been given this one for Christmas by my aunt and uncle. This was just, I love Trevor Noah just in general, but he tells some very interesting stories. I thought it was funny. It told a lot of things that I never would have thought of, never would have known, quite frankly. This is really good. It's engaging, it's funny. It's a little slow at times. It gets a little wordy sometimes, but it's definitely worth muscling through that. And I gave this one 5 stars. Yeah. My next book I read was Six of Crows. I finally asked Kelsey to suggest a book to me, and she said, hey, read this one. I liked Six of Crows. I gave that one 5 stars. I liked that one a lot. The heist was something that was intriguing to me. It was not predictable for me. So I very much enjoyed that one. Ooh, the next one I read, Promises to Keep by Joe Biden. It was an interesting story about him growing up in the home of Dunder Mifflin, growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, he was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and then they moved. It was very sweet. He told stories about meeting both of his wives and the heartbreak of losing his first wife and how he didn't think he was going to find anyone again, and then he found Dr. Jill. I liked seeing that side of him and that side of politics just in general. I've always been fascinated by politics. My stall tactic going to bed as a child was asking my dad about politics. My dad was a political science major, so that was good for a good 30 minutes to an hour every time. That kind of birthed this fascination with politics. I gave that book 4 stars. The next book I read I also don't have. It's called A Man Called Ove. This is a good book. Let me rephrase. The last quarter of this book is a good book. The first 3 quarters of this book are terrible. I hated it. I was texting Kelsey daily about how much I hated this book, but the ending of the book was so sweet. If you're one of those people that gives up on a book if it's not good in the first half, don't read this book. But if you're willing to muscle through it, this is a great book. It was super sweet. I talked myself into giving this book 5 stars. I was going to give it 3 stars because I was like, you have to review the whole book. But as I was reviewing it on Goodreads, my justification for it just became more and more. I was like, I can't leave this at 3 stars. This has to be a 5-star book. Let's see. The next book I read, Crooked Kingdom, the sequel to The Six of Crows. I didn't like this book. I didn't. It was not nearly as good. This one was predictable. It felt forced. It felt like she needed to write a sequel, so she wrote a sequel. There were parts of it that I was like, oh yeah, I'm okay with that, but most of it I was like, this is just... No. I gave this book a 3. The next book I read was Help for Billy. I think this is the one book I actually reviewed during the year, during something else. I just happened to have finished it, and Kelsey was like, hey, why don't you come and talk about this one? I did not like this book at all. I gave this book, I think, 2 stars because I was feeling generous that day. It wasn't completely useless, but any book that says that special area teachers are just there to give classroom teachers a break is going to get low ratings from me. It was boring. It was dull. It was all research that was old, and she cited Wikipedia. I don't even have words for this book. The next book I read was Soccer IQ by Dan Blank. This was a fun read. Like I said, I love soccer. I coached soccer my senior year of high school. My dad and I coached a 6U soccer team. They were all kindergarten, pre-K kids. It was kick and run. It was not soccer. But this book not only changed the way that I will coach soccer someday, which is one of my goals, it changes how I watch soccer. I pay attention to different things. I'm watching other things. This was a good read. If you ever want to play soccer, watch soccer, coach soccer, referee soccer, I don't know how I made it this far in my life without reading this book, quite frankly. That's where I'm at with that one. I gave that book 5 stars faster than I gave any book 5 stars in my life. The next book I read was A Most Wanted Man by John something. I hated that book. It took me forever to read. The chapters were too long. It was miserable. I gave it 3 stars because... Why did I get... Correction, I've now given that book 2 stars. because I really did not like that book. We watched the movie. Kelsey and I watched the movie, and it ended, and she looked at me and said, "Is that the end?" And I said, "That's how the book ended, too. Don't waste your time. Just don't." So the next book I read was The Rooster Bar by John Grisham. I needed a pick-me-up. I read a John Grisham. I read this over my fall break. And by over my fall break, I mean I started it on Saturday and was done with it by Monday. This is not his best book. He gets super preachy, but he's one of those that gets real preachy. But he gets super preachy about student debt, college debt, and for-profit universities in this one. There were some moments that were just laugh-out-loud funny. There were some moments that you were like, holy cow, I didn't think this book was going there. It may have been a bit unrealistic in places, and it definitely felt like he got tired and quit writing in this one. But I can read a John Grisham book in 2.5 days. Ultimately, I did enjoy this book. I don't remember what I gave this one. I gave it 5 stars. To be fair, I may have given it 5 stars because the book I read before it was so bad, and this was just a nice break. But I liked this one. Then we got into the Believe-a-thon. During this month, I read Benchwarmers. It was soccer and one of my favorite authors growing up, so I was like, oh, sure, why not? I very much enjoyed this one. There were some soccer game inaccuracies, which was a little annoying, but this was nice. It talked about girls getting the same rights as boys in middle school sports, which, I mean, in middle school sports, what girl wasn't better than the boys? I mean, seriously? This got me excited about the readathon, to be quite honest with you. I was like, all right, I could read this every day, and I really want to go back and read the rest of my books by him. Next, I read Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, which I've talked about like 1,000 times on this channel because I love this book so much, so I'm not going to take up a whole lot of time. It's just great. I love this book. It took me like 2 days to read it. It's not a hard read, but like I was working. Like I had to work, and I still read this book in like 2 days. I love this book. Then I read The Boxcar Children. I mean, The Boxcar Children would take me like 4 or 5 hours to read if I sat down and read it in one sitting. This book just makes me so happy. When they find the boxcar in the woods, the way they turn it into a house and a home. Like, you do kind of wonder about how on earth it happened, but maybe that's because it's 2019, and I was not raised in a generation where I could have gone out and disappeared for months and nobody really cared. 1942. Also, the money in this one just cracks me up sometimes. Like, I've got $1. I'll buy 4 loaves of bread. After Boxcar Children, I picked up one. I wasn't going to read this one, but it just it didn't literally jump off the shelf at me, but it caught my eye. Found from the Missing by Margaret Peterson Haddix. I've talked about this one once before, but this book is just mind-boggling is a good word for this one. Like, I've read it twice now, apparently. I'd forgotten that I read it once. I thought I got part of the way through it and quit, but as I was getting towards the end, I was like, oh no, I did read this. I've now started the second one so that I can read it, but like, holy cow. This book is creepy at first until it's all explained, and then it's just weird. I don't usually read sci-fi type stuff, so it was different for me and harder for me to wrap my brain around because I usually read, it's either obviously not realistic or it's very realistic. And so the fact that this was realistic until it wasn't made it a little difficult for me to wrap my mind around. But that didn't stop me from enjoying this book and starting the second one and buying all 8 of them. So that's where we're at right now. I apologize for how long this was. I really didn't think I had that much to say, but apparently I understand why my students get bored. Let's see how well I remember this. If you liked this video, give it a big thumbs up because that's a thing people do on the YouTube. And then you can subscribe down there too, apparently, and become a part of this awesome growing family. Did I get that right?
Yes, but you also sound like you're 100.
You whippersnappers, subscribe.
Oh my god.
If you would like to subscribe and become a part of this awesome growing family, I promise you won't have to listen to me next time. Not never, but next time. Because I will see you again at some point. Bye.